Will it let me? Okay, I'm going live. I'm opening the waiting room. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have everyone logging in now. We'll get started in a few minutes. Oh, Walt, do you want to share screen and put the welcome slide up? Because that has the housekeeping rules.
Okay. Let's see. We want to go here. Let me get the up the show.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, and then I'm going to spotlight your video so that you're pinned on screen.
Okay.
You're perfect.
I should minimize the people, or should I just let it go? You're going to do that. Right?
I'm sorry, say again, Walt, you were going in and out.
You're going to minimize the people, right? On the right?
You have to do that on your end. In the top right corner, you can click on speaker view or gallery view.
Yeah. I'm going to hit that, all right?
Okay. Yeah, those are all your controls. I don't see
Right.
what you're doing.
Okay.
Okay, can everyone just type into the chat, or a few people could type into the chat that you can hear okay? Great. All right, well, welcome everyone. This session is being recorded, so I just wanted to let you know. And we can hear, I'm Alyssa Poma from Montgomery Art Association, and we are pleased to have one of our association members, one of our newest members, and the founder of the Yellow Barn Studio and Gallery with us today to run this free online class, Walt Bartman. Walt is coming to us from his studio up in the mountains in Maryland. He and I have been testing his internet connection. It has been strong so far, but do know that it can be sporadic. So if Walt cuts out for a moment, please tolerate us. We think everything will go well. Because of the number of attendees that we have, we are expecting 100 people to be joining us today. Everyone is muted on entry, and you will remain muted throughout the class. If you do have a question or comment, please type it into the group chat. I will be monitoring that and will read out questions to Walt. So without further ado, Walt, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and you should be able to see me here. I want to say hi. Looking forward to presenting the lecture on how to set up a still life using symbolism, all right, which I do a lot. And then, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to give you a lecture and then I'm going to give you a demo. All right. Just want to test some things out. You see me right now when I'm discussing things with you, I'll be like this, but then I have a camera, all right, that's here that I'll be switching back and forth to. So you can kind of see the setup. And then besides that, we also have a camera that's on a tripod. It's a cell phone, and it's actually, you got a close up of the still life. Still life. So if you look at that one window, you'll be able to see what the still life looks like. I might move that a little bit sometimes if I need to have you look at something like my palette or something like that. But I'm open. Tonight's going to be fun, and I'm really looking forward to working and lecturing to you tonight. And if you have any questions, like Melissa said, or Alyssa said, just chat with her. Okay. So here we go. We're going to go to share screen, and we're going to do the presentation that I put together for you, to kind of as an introduction for this evening. All right. So first of all, for everybody here, just make sure you change the view so that you can see me. All right. And just be very aware that if you have slides or images of participants, that they could block the content of what you're seeing. So tonight is the meaning of the symbolic still. Over the years, I've taught painting for 50 years. So, and I've taught thousands of people in and around this area. And then, we do workshops internationally, so that, it's been a great career. One of the things that I've enjoyed teaching here recently is working with the flowers, all right, and using that as a subject. I kind of walked into it. I remarried and married a master gardener who taught me to appreciate the flowers. So they became a subject of mine here in the last few years, and I've enjoyed it. So the lecture tonight is going to be on how to set up a still life symbolically and why would you do that. Okay, so here we go. All right. First of all, what I want you to do is to understand that I employ symbolism in all my work. It is an underlying element that is important. So the first thing is we're going to look at the still life we're going to paint tonight. And just to tell you that a lot of people look at things, materialism is an approach to painting, all right, that where people just kind of paint what's there. And they define things based upon what they've been told they are or how they think they are. And so, the violin, of course, is a musical instrument, and the bowl of fruit is a container for food. And the flowers are just brought indoors because they brighten up the interior. And the book is for information, and the turquoise tablecloth is a tablecloth. And the old sculpture is an old sculpture. So you start to realize that a lot of people will set things up based upon design elements, all right, which might be the shape or the color, and then arrange it, all right. But one of the things that I do is that I bring a lot of interest when I put things together on the symbolic presence, which is the violin is playing with emotion, very much like the Dutch in the 17th century, and it's female. It's got a female shape to it. And then the other thing is the bowl is of abundance. Depending upon what's in it, it could have, number of vegetables or fruits that are in there. It would be more abundant if it was full. The flowers give us pleasure, all right? And they also are about regeneration, and turquoise is the color of spirituality. So when you start looking at the colors here, all right, the book is for knowledge, the blue cloth is for insight, the indigo cloth is for the depths of the mind, and the old sculpture is a test of time. So it'll give you an idea of, using elements, but also kind of telling a story. And the story here is that, it's about pleasure. I mean, if I was to say, looking at this, it's someone who enjoys looking at art books and likes to have the pleasure of fruit nearby and flowers. And then they're very similar. And then you have the violin. So, and then I put it on different levels. So I always like to put still life on different levels because I think that they can kind of connect in a way that maybe perhaps doesn't make the sense that someone would do ordinarily. All right. So that's one of the things that I like to do. The other thing is, why do I use symbolism? I've always been intrigued by the ability to imagine. And I think that symbolism takes me to another level. Symbolism takes my work without it, to another level. Without it, I would only paint what I think I see. All right. And this lecture, please accept the ambiguity and contradiction that you're going to get here, because in making an idea, it is all about that. And I think that a lot of people, when they take classes, they want the answers, but honestly, there are always two answers, as far as I'm concerned, and more. So where does symbolism start? Well, in the 1886, we have a movement in France called the Symbolists. All right. And they were influenced by a number of things, but mostly by the works of writers. And there's another term that was going on too, was just synthetism. All right. And I think the idea is that the writers inspired the painters. And artists like Gauguin and Whistler and Redon and Edvard Munch, they're only a few of the symbolists. I think, honestly, that the great majority of artists through history, even if they didn't realize it, they're speaking in symbols. So symbolism followed Impressionism, all right? And you got to understand that it's the antithesis of Impressionism. And that is that artists felt that they needed to go beyond the naturalism in work. And you need to understand a little bit about an Impressionist. They were about the pleasures of life. They were about pleasuring the senses. They didn't paint storms very much. They didn't paint, starvation and things like that might be taking place. What they did paint was the gardens and the parties. And I think that when you start to realize the difference between the two, all right, you'll get an idea that the symbolist wanted to go beyond naturalism, just explaining it the way it is, maybe explaining it in color, the new tool, in other words, of that period. So going back to what symbols are about, we can trace it all the ways back to prehistoric times. And I think that the artists, what does that mean? How important is it? Well, if that was important back then and it still is today, then it must be very important. So one of the things I did one time when I was teaching, I had a group of students and I decided I had to give a lecture at the World Bank, honestly, and it was about not believing what you see, all right? So I had a group of students take a Botticelli and find in it another image, all right? And you can do that with any painting, by the way, all right? And this is interesting that this young girl, she perceived this woman on horseback. Now, where did she get the idea? She just connected the lines inside the painting. And I think that what you see then is, and this is what I'm going to tell you about all art, and this is why I do it, all right, is because it's an important tool to understanding that what we see is how we connect the lines, how we make our ideas. In other words, we may see the girl on horseback and not the three graces, you see. All right. So when we get to symbolism, what's probably one of the most powerful images in symbolism is what you see right here. All right. But it goes further back than that. One of the things that this symbol explains is that you have what is called light and dark. And in the light is where you see the images, and in the dark, you can't see an image. But the other thing is a symbol can be used in many ways to explain design. And I always try to get my students to design in black and white. That means that the grays either have to be interpreted one way or the other. And I think that the challenge, okay, here, just understand the symbol is that when you have something that's really light, you're going to have something really dark next to it. When you see a dark spot on a light sheet of paper, you're really seeing the dark spot. So you'd see the least of something, not the most. And I think when you're making a painting, that's one of the elements that you need to be aware of. So now I'm out painting last summer. I have a Tillman workshop. I do 3 of them down at my studio on Tillman Island. And we had a full moon in that workshop, and we decided, we paint all day there. I mean, we get up early in the morning and we paint through the day. And it's sort of like boot camp. It's great. All right. But that night we had a full moon. And I decided, well, I'm going to stand out in the yard, which is dark, and try to paint this full moon. I was drawn to it. All right. And I think that a lot of things, one of the reasons I'm showing the landscape is the landscape is going to be the initial thing that we use to think design. All right. But one of the keys here is the importance of the circle and the power of the moon. All right. And when we think in terms of the moon, we think in terms of it controlling the tides. Well, it controls you too. All right. And it controlled me to have an impulse to paint it. But the other thing that really has struck me over the years is understanding that what we're doing is trying to take what's in our minds and bring it out on canvas. All right. And so honestly, that picture of that moon was inside my head. All right. Which I think is what I want you to understand as we're working here. So the moon was one powerful image. The other is the sun. And I think that, Turner, all right, thought that God is the sun. All right. That's what he felt. And I think when I painted this Atonement Island, that's what I felt too. I felt the power of something that, set the stage for a painting like this. All right. And all these paintings are immediate. I'm very much about painting immediately because thoughts are immediate and I want to capture those thoughts. So the thing about this is interesting is that when we get to transcendentalism, which I think is a movement that took place in the United States around 1836, with Emerson and Thoreau, they were the central figures. It influenced landscape painters and of the 19th century to see God in nature. So the power of nature was an important element in designing things. So whether we bring flowers in from outside, or elements of nature, fruits, vegetables, so on, they are powerful symbols to us. So this is a powerful symbol. And I just wanted to see that when I'm painting nature, that I experience it in a lot of different ways. And this was a storm that was coming across the bay at sunset. So it'll just give you an idea that the drama that nature can give you. Well, what do I do with that? Well, I try to bring it back into the studio, all right, in setting up ideas. So I consult nature, in other words. The other thing that's very important, and I think that when we work in making our paintings, I don't know how you think poetically, all right, but I'm going to explain to you how this was very important about symbolism, the symbolist movement of the 19th century. All right, it really was influenced by poetry, and there are a lot of artists that have been influenced by poetry. But I'm going to explain to you here in a few minutes how I really took to understanding my paintings, and a lot of them came from looking at things in a poetic way. Well, poetry is a little bit more abstract than prose, you see. And so the element of abstraction plays an important part in what I do. And I think that you have to understand that when I titled this painting, it's the end of the day. I called it The Last Breath. All right. And one of the things I want you to understand about my own life is that when I look at anything, especially nature and the day is the microcosm of my life. When I'm born, it was sort of like early morning. All right. You see the sun coming up. And then, puberty is about the middle of the day or the middle of the morning, still bright, but the colors are starting to get dull. And then you eventually get to the middle of that day, which spans about 3 hours and there are no shadows. All right. That's your work day, when you're working in your history of your life. And then comes the period of the storms. And I think this is where I am at this stage of my life. All right. In understanding that the storms come in the late afternoon. And then the last light, which is the last breath, is what I depicted here. All right. So a lot of my work, and you'll see it here today, is based on this kind of concept or idea. And when I do paint the landscape or I do paint the still life, I'm looking for certain things that perhaps maybe, would perhaps maybe give me an idea that maybe would be kind of unique. All right. And so if I consult nature, I'm able to find it. And, as Francis Bacon said, he said, the job of the artist is to deepen the mystery this is one of the things that I think the symbolists were about, and one of the things that I'm about in my own work. So this is a funny painting, which I think I want you to understand how I look at symbolism. But I've lived my life with the idea that it's the invisible that needs to be found. We've heard it said by many artists, all right, that this is the search, okay? But I honestly feel the clue is in the visible. And so you just need to look at the visible and then come to an understanding. And I think this is where symbolism has helped me come to that. So this painting is called Transformation. And I don't know if you realize what I mean by that, but that tree, okay, is looking at what it eventually become. And I think we're going to become a telephone pole, right? So, you know, it's a very interesting parallel. And I think that maybe when we go out and paint landscapes, if you're just a literal thinker, you'll never see the connection between the two. So now, a lot of that has inspired a lot of my paintings. And and you're going to say, well, do you plan this out? Do you plan the idea that you're going to go look symbolically at things? No, I think that now it's a given. And truthfully, I just I'm set in a way where I'm driving down the road and I recognize things, not because I'm consciously thinking about them, but they all of a sudden appear to me. And sometimes I don't even know why I'm compelled to paint them, but I know that this is what I need to do. All right. So I was driving down the road in Maine one afternoon and I see these two Volkswagens, and you know, I'm not a fan of Volkswagens. All right. So the important thing here is okay.
And I believe in our Constitution much more so than most people.
I think we have some
to be able to let the governors do what they have to do. Those states are doing a fantastic job, all 8 of them. They're doing a fantastic job. So we'll see what happens. As for your question, you fully understand what I'm saying. So thank you.
Okay, well, he's listening.
Sorry for that interruption, everyone. I'm trying to figure out where that sound is coming from.
Boris Johnson, when he talked about shaking hands with hospital patients, did he downplay the threat of this virus too much? And do you know exactly what this current?
I think Boris was looking at it.
So strange.
He was looking at it like write it out. Many people thinking about writing it out, meaning, you know.
Well, I can talk over this, so you can listen to me. How do you want to do this?
Could everyone please? All right, it's Joyce. All right. Sorry, that was one of our participants was unmuted and I guess watching television at the same time. Well, please continue.
All right, here we go. So I'm driving down the road and I see these two, which I eventually called sisters. All right. And, you know, if you understand symbolism, you understand the color symbolism, but the attraction is that they were like a contrast. But the other thing that's very interesting is that you know, maybe it wasn't that I consciously understood this, but looking back on paintings, I start to ask myself questions about the element of symbolism, and the green that's in between, whether you realize it or not, is a color. Green is the color that can go both ways. It can go warm or cool. All right. So it really is a color that actually creates a connection between the two elements here of the buses. But the other thing is just the way I designed it. And I consciously design things based upon what I think is important to the design of the painting. So, you know, it wasn't intended to be symbolic at the time that it was painted, but now looking back on it, it's very interesting how I could tell a symbolic story in it. So the elements of symbolism, you know, are making ideas visual. And I think that paintings are thoughts being recorded in a language of paint. So ideas start as abstract thought and progress toward conscious thought. And tonight, when I give the demo, I'm going to show you that. That's how I work. I want to go through that abstract period of thinking. The importance of coming with an idea or finding one. I'm a person that really doesn't want to have an idea. I'm going to show you that tonight. But there are people who come with ideas. You can come either way, all right? But for me, I don't want an idea. I don't want a preconceived idea. I don't want to be guided by something, all right? So thinking in prose or poetry, I try to think in poetry. And when I'm looking at a subject, I really am looking for a deeper meaning. And when I did paint this painting, I knew that this was the spirit of the sundogs. I know the sundogs are an element in the sky that almost look like suns, all right? And they spell that storms are coming. but this is you know, painting that I did years and years ago, but I really felt this. All right. So there are certain elements when you're in nature that you can feel. All right. And based upon that, you need to draw parallels between what you experience in nature and how you can bring it indoors to work from the still life. So my work is strongly influenced by color. I don't think I would paint without it. All right. And I think that when I'm involved in it, do I understand the color symbolism? Yes, I do. We had Wolf Kahn's study, or not study, he gave a lecture at the Yellow Barn. And, you know, I asked him, I said, I know you like the color orange because it's in your book. You say orange is so important to you. I said, why? And he said, because I like it. All right. Well, orange is the color of pleasure. So I could see that that might be his response. But, you know, Wolf Kahn's work is all about pleasuring the senses. And I think that your strength is your weakness. All right. So I think that the thing is that when you look at an artist, you can almost say, hey, Van Gogh, you really like yellow, or hey, Walt Bartman, you really like red. You're going to see that in a few minutes here. All right. So now this is a painting that I did in the studio when I had a model. All right. And, you know, one of the things about your own paintings is you can discover so much about yourself. All right. And that's your body of work. And so from that, I realized I really like red. All right. This was a very old painting where I started with, I used to draw with red. All right. And this one, you know, I don't know what I called that one. I called it flush. All right. This one I called birth of an idea. And actually I took it past this point and it became less the birth. All right. So one of the things that I recommend my students to do is photograph their paintings through the different stages they go through, because it's sort of like recording thoughts. And that may be the purpose of a camera. All right. Not to copy photos, but to take pictures of where your paintings, the stages are going through. All right. So here I have this stage, but this is the stage I like the painting the best. And honestly, you could feel that it's the birth of an idea. Another thing is that because I see so much red, red's been so interesting for me. You know, the parallel to the trumpet is something that's very interesting, because it is a color that would, you know, make people take notice. And I think here one afternoon, I was in a position where I was painting something and I thought, you know, the subject isn't much at all, but God's the color radiating. And so this is the thing that really pulls me. So whenever I go after a subject, I'm going to go after it for its color. All right. And I did that with these lobsters. And it's interesting, I called it lobster obituary, but that's because I was out eating these lobsters on the back of my pickup truck. And I didn't realize that I had put the obituary section underneath. So there was a blatant symbolic painting. But then this one, which I think we're, you know, when we go to the stores and we see things that might interest us, all right, we may have an interest in them for some other reason, in other words, okay? It's not our eyes, but our minds that prevent us from seeing. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to give you some questions to ask yourself, and that is, are you a literal thinker, and do you paint objects? All right. If you do, if you call a tree, you know, a lot of times I have students talk to me and they'll be discussing their paintings and say, oh, that tree over there. I don't want to hear that, really, because I think that you don't want to think in terms of objects. Are you thinking that light makes shade? Well, you know, yin and yang, that's the symbol, is that light makes the shade that you're seeing. And that shapes in a painting are the clues and the puzzle to that idea. All right. So, you know, it's important to have shape. Are you feeling emotion? This is the thing that I think a lot of artists lack. They rather give up emotion for the picture. And I've always said, I want to paint a painting. I don't want to paint a picture. So I think that this is one of the challenges as an artist. And then the question is, do you think in symbolically? That's where I'm coming from. And then is perception a point of view? All right. So I think that sometimes perception isn't a point of view. I think sometimes you have to understand what the perception really is. And a lot of times I'll ask students questions like, what are they seeing? And they'll tell me they're, you know, how they're seeing something, but they're not really seeing the way it is. And then the last thing that I lead my life by is that I realized that I can paint any color I want, and eventually it will happen. All right, so this is where I'm coming from. So these are symbolic paintings of what I would call still life objects. All right, they could be 2 bottles, they could be 2 chairs, they could be any arrangement of objects of any sort. But here the objects are 2 chairs conversing, almost like people. And I think that when you do make arrangements, you know, you can base them on, I mean, you come with a preconceived idea and say, I think I'm going to try to find conversation in my still life. All right. But the other thing is that sometimes you just discover that. And here, when I was young, in my 40s, I had a good friend who was a poet, and he's the one that taught me so much about my own painting. All right, and that was, he made me realize that my paintings were more than I realized. Tonguing the Sun, The Yoke, these were titles that he gave my paintings one time when I was having a show, and I thought to myself, well, these are great. And then I started really thinking about my own way of looking at things. So this is a book that I kind of carry around. I wear out. I've had it in my studio. When I lose it, I kind of get a little upset about it. But, you know, sometimes you need to refer to this, but sometimes it just sets your mind in motion. And an artist that was highly influenced by symbolism was Turner. So I think that, you know, when we look at his work and you understand what the influences are on his work and how he made his ideas, all right, they really were tied to the romantic and to the symbolists. I, you know, in my early career, you know, I'd have workshops and I'd take them on location. And here I was in Moss Landing in California, outside Monterey, and you know, I decided I'm going to give a demo and pick this arrangement. And I'm thinking to myself, I really like that old truck and I really like that old boat. Well, that was the way I was thinking. The friend, the poet, he said, no, you're thinking about land and sea. All right. And you know, the other thing that he told me when I did this painting was, no, you're thinking about the apocalypse. All right. Because when the red cow comes, that's the time that the end of the earth it spells the end of the earth. So what are the symbols of the land? All right. And where are you from? Are you connected to the land, or are you connected to the water? This is what I would say influences a lot of people in the way they make ideas. All right. So, you know, all I can say is that these are ideas that tie us to the land. And the symbol of my friend George Harrison, you know, his symbol was a red pickup truck and his old white house that he lived in. But they go beyond that. They go to, you know, being able to move and also stay. And you know, so just keep that in mind. The other is, I was talking about the red, but I gave my students one time, I said, let's do a symbolic painting. And so we went into the woods, and you know, I look for the reddest tree because I like red. All right. And then I realized I painted the artery. Okay. The tree has been found to represent the physical and spiritual nourishment. All right. The transformation and liberation, the union and fertility. So these are elements that give us, that maybe motivate you to make paintings. All right. And when I did this, you know, you might not think of this as a symbol of the womb, or you might not think of it as mystical. You might think of it as just a barn. Well, to me, the shadows are very mystical. They're something that draws you in a mysterious way. And that barn is, you know, if I write the story about this, I will talk about it being a womb, okay, where we return to the womb every night. And then the, you know, the shadows as being mystical. And the symbols of the sea, these are works of mine. So when you start seeing them, you know, this was, kind of, I can't remember the name of it. I think, Sky Stream or something like that, where literally this was streaming into the water, like water would do the other way. All right. You know, as if it was going down a waterfall. No, this is the light coming down out of the sky and hitting. It's like Como, by the way. So the horseshoe crab, I've painted the horseshoe crab. You say, well, why did you paint it? Well, I kind of thought it was interesting. I thought it was symbolic, though, because, you know, just the nature of its shield-like quality. All right. And when you look at it, you see that, you know, the crab really is a symbol that, you know, it protects itself, and it gives us knowledge and wisdom. Okay. What is important to us at all times. So I also painted this crab, and I didn't realize that the way the moon is described, a large red crab is found at the foot of the moon. And I decided I'd paint that large red crab. So does that give my paintings more validity? I think it does, all right, to have a reason that might go beyond what I'm thinking. So if you were to choose a subject for your still life, how would you choose it? Would you look for a subject that has interest? All right. My advice is to avoid the literal. As Magritte said, this is not a pipe. So I never look at flowers as flowers, okay? I've tried to break myself of that. I challenge myself to always find a deeper meaning and to think there's no preconceived idea. That's important to me, and to think abstractly. I particularly like to have my mind in a pattern of abstract thinking where I'm looking for pattern, which is the building blocks of an idea. So I want to make form visible. So I really take it from the stages where it's not visible to where it is, all right? And one of the other things that I'm going to share with you is that for me, in my painting, I want all the arts in it. So I want my painting to have the sense of music, poetry, and dance, as well as the visual. So this is the thing that becomes important to me in designing something. So the other thing about deeper meanings, I don't know what this character means, all right? But I can tell you that it might mean the same as this character, all right? And what's the difference? One is visual, we've made it visual. The other is abstract, all right? They may have the same meaning. And I think this is the key to understanding what it means to think abstractly, because I think that we can make things easily visible if we want, all right? Do we want to? Maybe we want to go the other way in some respects. So this is a painting that I called Scent, all right? And I felt you could smell this painting, all right? But the things in nature are harmful in the proportions of the number of senses they delighted. And that was in the 12th century. So the interpretation of this flower in the 12th century would have been totally different than it is today, all right? And the other thing is, I want to stay more abstract to retain the essence. So it's important for me to get that essence in my work. And when that work goes beyond the essence, I feel that, and I'm sure a lot of you have had the same experience, it just kind of falls apart. So this is a painting that has essence in it, all right? And it has abstraction in it. And it is about making an image that maybe we've all experienced, all right? But it's also about making it in a way that takes it to another level that perhaps maybe we wouldn't think of. And all I can tell you is this is what I'm searching for, all right? So when I'm making paintings of flowers, which are going to be the subject here, it depends on how far I want to take them, all right, as to what the mind does with this. And I think that this is the key for me in making my work, is to understand that, what compels me to paint is color. So I really look for the colors, all right? And I look for emotion. I look for how things are expressed. As you see here, which, expresses a little bit more in the way of what hands mean and what a deity means, and how the form of the flowers is not only taking you in, but bringing that out to you. So it's sort of, when I made this painting, I felt the complexity of moving in and moving out. You're going to say, did you just not paint flowers? No, I felt something beyond that. And this one, I want you to understand something. I call this emptiness. This is one of my, I think, most unique paintings. And the reason I say that is because the symbol of the bowl is empty, all right? And the symbol of the flower is fertility, all right? And the interesting thing about this is that it may mean that the person has emptiness in her life, you see, all right? By the fact that the bowl is the way it is, the fact that her head is turned down. All right, there is spirituality in the turquoise. All right, if you know the chakras, you know that there's color symbolism. All right, so these are elements. You're going to say, did I set these up? No, but honestly, these are the paintings that I think have a much more profound element of symbolism than other paintings that I've made, as here, Shattered Vision. All right. And then this one, which I think is one of my most profound ones. I just thought I was going to paint the sun coming into a room one day. Then I realized I was painting the prophet, someone who's blind in one eye and can see in and see out at the same time. And so the outer world's on the left, the inner world's on the far right, and where we meet is in the middle. Don't ask me how I came up with that idea. This is in a major collection with Van Goghs and Picassos and Max Ernst and a number of artists. And it's interesting that they bought this painting. So maybe they realized what the painting possessed more than just the literalness of a window, all right? And here's another one that I did. And I've always been attracted to the images where there's a duality. And the duality is we're seeing in and we're seeing out at the same time, just like in yin and yang. And then this is one which has a much more mathematical underlying symbolism of the Trinity, the triangle, the number 3. And these, and I'm just sharing these with you. I hope you're enjoying this because it's giving you an idea of what I'm about. I did 2 paintings here. They actually have 2 different meanings, even though they're the same subject. And one here is the focus on the rocks, and that means the focus on rigidity, all right? And this is the focus on the water, and that means the focus on fluidity, all right? So it's interesting that I go out and whenever I'm painting in the, especially Great Falls, that's how I visualize Great Falls when I'm painting it, as this mystical moment here. Symbolism, just to give you some ideas, is about dreams and visions, okay, and ideas and beliefs, and thinking in visual images. And everything, you know, we can see it in mathematics, we can see it in the number system, we can see it in colors and so on, all right? This is, I don't know if many of you know Phyllis Plattner, but Phyllis used to teach at Micah, is a really close friend of mine. And I was younger at the time, and I remember her saying that she was, you know, she had her kids and she couldn't really paint in her studio, so she decided to paint in her kitchen. And she did a series of symbolist paintings called Murder in the Kitchen. So she, you know, that just inspired her to handle the subject in a different way. And then this was done just recently by Kathleen Zeifang, and this is really quite interesting. And that is, this is on the coronavirus. And I gave a group of students who were taking my online course to do an iconic imagery of the mask. And this is one of the ones that I received. And you can see the symbolism in this particular piece when you think of the rebirth of the flower. All right. So symbolism, this is really important. If you can make it on paper, it will happen. All right. And these are my flower paintings. I'm just going to run through them now so that you can see what I do with flowers. And then we're going to give you a demo. But it will give you an idea that one of the reasons that I paint flowers, there's no doubt, is because it pleasures my senses. All right. And can I have this one other still life that I haven't painted, but it's here, and it's all of dead flowers. All right. And I'm going to be motivated to do that sometime, but it's hard being married to my wife because she really loves flowers. All right. She doesn't like dead flowers. So it's a challenge. But these are some of the flower paintings. And you got to understand that I came to this subject late in my life. It's a subject that I didn't think to paint, all right, because my mind was on different approaches and ways of thinking other than just the sensitivity of nature here, all right. The other thing that you might notice is that I always have this kind of book juxtaposed. I just find that books and flowers go really well together. Don't ask me why, but I will find that out someday, all right? But they seem to be the thing that I tend to decorate my setups with, and I have it today as well. Okay, and let's see what else we have. So just give you an idea of some of the ways I work. And this one, by the way, I was drawn to the deep blue water, all right, which would be the depths of the mind, you know, as far as symbolism is concerned. And then I'm going to show you how, this is the last few slides, and then we're going to get on to maybe answering some questions and then giving a painting demonstration and talking about how I do this. But no painting ends like you think it will, all right? And I think that this is one of the things that you have to come to accept. This was my very first flower painting, all right? And it was only done about 7 years ago, maybe. All right, but this is how I started it. And you're gonna say, well, how are you starting? Well, I'm starting on a dark canvas. I drew with red, all right? And I went after the strongest element that I saw and I placed it, all right? And honestly, this is how I build my paintings. I build them on elements that are what I can measure from. So then I went after what defined the form, which was the light. And on a dark canvas, I'm really thinking yin and yang, believe it or not here. And that is that the light is making form, all right? And here the light, you can see how it's defining it. But you know, one of the things that I want is, I know the brush conveys meaning, all right? And the freshness of the brush conveys a sense of the freshness of thought. You know, brushstroke to me is really important, all right? Because it really signifies communicating an element that, you know, painting possesses. So here was the next stage. And this is where I went after color. And then I finished it like you saw. All right. So now we're just about done. These are some of the events that are coming up. We have Susan Abbott coming up with an art critique. All right. And on the 15th of April. And then, you know, you can get in touch with the Montgomery County Art Association. All right. So that's that is the lecture for today.
Hey, Walt, real quick, I accidentally turned off the still life camera. Can you go over to that and just click the button to turn it back on?
Okay. Let's see if I can do that. I'm going to take it off here. Second.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Is there any questions at all that people might have at this point?
No questions on Zoom or Facebook at the moment.
Okay. All right.
Oh, here we have one. Do you believe everyone responds to your symbols in the same way?
No, because I think that the element that you're finding is elements that, let's just put it this way, they're not elements. When I said that I painted George's truck and his home, those were symbols of George, but those are not symbolic, what we call symbolic symbols. Symbols like an empty bowl is definitely an element of what we call symbolism. So we can have different levels of symbolism, some that are personal, all right? And, you know, but we do know that's, like, for instance, the colors that we're working with, we know that they really do have a symbolic meaning. And so does McDonald's. McDonald's knows to paint the inside of their restaurants orange because, as Wolf Kahn said, it's for pleasure, but it also makes you want more of it. So I think that when you start to realize, I'm looking at the chat, the different buttons down at the bottom here, and I'm looking at the color orange for the chat button, you know, it's something in which I realized that your orange doesn't satisfy you. You want more of it. So I think that this is something to understand about color. You get that once you've painted enough. All right. Okay. Any other ones?
Yes. Ellen wanted to know the name of the author of the symbolism dictionary that you referenced.
Yeah, it's a French name, and it's Cirlot, I believe. All right.
Okay. And Teresa is asking, does it matter to you that although you are aware of the symbolism, most likely your audience is not?
Yeah, I think most of the people that I teach are not symbolic thinkers. I think that the great majority of them are trying to paint the subject the way it appears. All right, which is okay. That's fine. That's part of symbolism too. But the thing is that there's a greater meaning to what the elements are. We need to be able to understand that. A good example, and I don't know if people are familiar with this, but the tree is a big influence symbolically on a lot of artists. We get out through history and see all the artists that painted trees, all right? And one of them is Jackson Pollock. People don't even realize, and Jackson Pollock didn't realize, that they just ran a kind of a computerized study of his work. and realized that the patterns that he painted were rhythmic patterns of trees or capillaries, all right, that are in your body. So there's no randomness, in other words. He may not have thought that he was painting anything but drips, but truthfully, there was something that was guiding him. And sometimes we just don't know why. So, okay, what else? Anything?
That's all. Why don't we get started with the
All right, let's get
demo,
started.
and I'll read out any other questions that
Okay.
come in.
What we're gonna do now is we're gonna talk about the no preconceived idea. This is where I come from. I try to get people to understand that I don't want you to come with an idea. I want you to find an idea. So my own work, this is one of the things that I do. All right. And one of the keys to this, let's see if we can make this get a little closer here. I've got this fancy gizmo now. Really, look at this, folks. I mean, honestly, I'm with it. All right. Took about 2 weeks to understand Zoom, but now we're ready. And I've got I'm going to be running some classes here at the Yellow Barn, and one of them is people painting in their studio, and we'll be able to, if people invest in a little camera like this and have a setup, I can watch you work. All right. So I'm hoping that I'm not going to be in your way when I'm drawing. Okay. But one of the things, let me just say this, I am a firm believer of starting without an idea, and I'm a firm believer starting at your feet. The Buddhist said the microcosm of the universe is at your feet. All right. So just like the day is the microcosm of your life. All right. So I tend to try and start somewhere that's close to me. All right. And I'm just gonna follow the line, but this is a very interesting thing. This is what Paul Klee said when he said, take a line for a walk, all right? And I didn't realize this until I had a student that studied with me here recently, that what I would be doing would be to kind of try and find a composition, but it would be found in a way that was very unique. And that is just to take a line for a walk. Okay. So we're going to take this line for a walk. And I want you to see that I'm not planning out a composition at all. I just took the composition, started it from where I was. Okay. And I'm working my way up. You're going to say, well, what if I didn't draw it correctly? You're not going to draw it correctly, but even the photo doesn't take the photo correctly if you look at the scale of the photo to what you're really seeing. So, why would you, think that everything's going to come out to be just perfect? No, but it's going to give you an idea. And what you're seeing here with the way I'm working, and this is what I encourage all my students to do, is just to take a line for a walk, like Paul Klee said, and find it as it goes through your space. Okay. If this was Ellsworth Kelly, this is as far as he would go. All right. And he would put 2 colors to it, and it would be in the Hirshhorn. So, just keep this in mind. It's all about what you have in your mind as to what you're going to do. All right. But the next step is off of that line, I start playing other lines. All right. And, I have to look at shapes and that to make sure that I've got things the way they should be. All right. But, we're going to have all kinds of things like this, but there might be a shape in there like that. But then we're going to go kind of follow that line and go over here. Okay. And then we'll follow this line and go over here like that. All right. And then I'll come back here, maybe off of this line and follow it here. I'll try to do this quickly for you. All right. And then this will come in here like this. Make this here. And then this is going up like this. But I've shown students this many times. All right. And honestly, the key to this is to try and get it, there's a certain sense of, I'm off to the side here, so I'm not trying to block the camera at this point so that you can see what I'm doing. But it'll give you an idea of just exactly what my idea for composition is going to be. And this is the composition, all right? And it didn't come from me, and I tell students, and a lot of people will study with me, and they know it works, all right? So, you know, this is all about shape. It's all about getting lines and that to work for you, okay? And just want to see where this comes from. It comes down here like this, goes around, comes up like this. Now, why would I be doing this? I'd be doing this just to get an idea, all right? This helps me to see this. But guess what? I might find in this, all right, something very unique, which is that I might find a girl on a unicorn, all right? And I think that this is one of the things that I'm hoping to do, all right? So I'm just looking to see if we're gonna get this to work right, okay? So now, after that, we're gonna go into, say, this shape that's coming down here. Give it a little room here. That shape's coming down like this, and then kind of coming into this, this is gonna come out a little bit further. And you can erase this, but the truth of it is, look at the composition that I'm getting, all right? And it's very paintable. So I think that I'm just gonna try and correct this little object here by standing in front so I can see it from this view, all right? Because I think that's one of the things that when I give a demo like this, the challenges are to not block you, but at the same time, just get this to go like this. All right, so here we are with our composition. And I think that I could continue this longer, all right? Certainly you could use an eraser and erase some lines and kind of correct things. But we're about trying to get this to become an interesting idea. And I think it is right now, an idea that I would really like to paint. So, you know, with that, but it's an abstract way of thinking, and it gives you opportunities to maybe that comes up there like that, goes like this, so that you have that, okay? And then even getting into here with some line. And it's all continuous line. Now, let me explain something to you about drawing. And I don't know how good you think you are at drawing, but one of the keys to making a drawing work is the speed of the line. All right. So how fast do you make this this drawing? If you notice that my speed is about the same all the way through. And actually, what I'm doing now is just kind of going after looking for the shapes and just working it until the whole thing will appear. All right. But this will give you an idea of breaking up the or at least understanding it, because what you want to do is you want to see everything. And so this would then help me to paint it. And I like to do a little sketch like this before I start, all right? And I recommend to my students to do that. So if I'm in a bar and I really want to get the feeling for the bar, I'm going to take a line on this journey to kind of discover what it's about. And then also the interesting patterns of shape that I might be making. I said it in the lecture, I said that shape is sort of the puzzle that fits together that gives you the whole. And I honestly feel that if you put all your shapes together, all right, where they interlock, then all you have to do is find your color and your value. all right? Because shape is critical to design. So this is one of the things. Okay. So with that, are there any questions on this?
Well, can you talk us through the still life itself? Take us on a little tour of it and tell us how you set that up.
All right. The interesting thing is that I you know, this is a colorful still life. I could keep things monochromatic. All right. That would be a little bit harder to do. All right. But honestly, this is a setup. There are a lot of artists that don't like to set anything up. They just like to go paint what's there. I think that when you do that, the intention is communicated, all right, based upon the naturalism of the moment. So, you know, and then also the subject. I told my wife, I said, you know, I'm going to give them this lecture on painting the still life, and then I'm going to paint my palette. All right. And I think that the thing is that you come to realize that there's so much that you can paint that it might not be interpreted as being the still life. But here we have arranged objects for you, because I'm going to talk about color as well when I'm painting. And the arrangement is that, you know, I had a beautiful turquoise cloth, which I think works very, very well for the light that's in here at this time. This is a hard still life to light in with these cameras. And yesterday's still life that I had up was very difficult to see. All right. This is much easier to see with the camera. So that's another reason why I did it. But then the other thing is, besides that, I then started to look at you know, the time of the year and actually the flowers that we have, which are these turquoise. I don't know. My wife told me what they were, but I can't remember now. And of course the daffodils, and the you know, with that we're you know, kind of saying it's spring. All right. So the colors tend to follow the kind of spring colors. They're vibrant. They're, you know, it would be different if it was the fall. All right. So I think the thing is to recognize that you know, this is the kind of thing that you know, has that. The book I mentioned to you, I really like the book, but I use the book for a number of reasons. I really like the way it breaks the space up and the way it creates a pattern of shape. And I've always liked the rhythm of a book. All right, I like that curve that's in it. So I tend to go for things like that. And then you know, we're just looking here to try to get the shapes of things now. All right, and you know, if I have to correct something, I will a little bit just to get it to go larger. But you can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing here now with this. So what are the elements? Well, one is the violin. Its color is really symbolic. It stands out. So if we were to look at this still life and we were to say, all right, is it a warm or a cool still life? If you're really looking at the warm colors, it's a cool still life. Remember yin and yang, and it said that that things are, you see the least of something, not the most. So if you're seeing the yellow, that means that there's less yellow in the still life, all right? Or if you're seeing the orange, there's less orange. But you can see how the warm colors resonate. So it tells you that it's a cool still life. All right, what else? Anything else?
Yeah, there's a number of questions that have come in. What is your preferred material for drawing? Charcoal.
Pencil, pen, it doesn't really matter. This, you're getting an idea. If there was a weakness in here right now, it would be me sitting and being about right here and trying to draw this this one object that we have that's, you know, looks a little tilted. But the rest of it is very interesting shape. And honestly, even if this is tilted, if I found the shapes inside it, all right, that would make it work. So you know, I like charcoal. Charcoal you can always erase very easily. Okay. Anything else?
This relates to what you were just talking about. Do you worry about the accuracy of the drawing before you start painting?
I am pretty good at this. All right. I've got the proportions here. I think the violin is probably the thing that's off. And actually, it is off right here. Okay, and I didn't get this space right in here. This could be a little bit bigger and come over here a little bit more. All right, but I understand that. More than anything, it's me looking at this and looking at the shapes that I'll be working with. All right, so you know, one of the things that we didn't do, this is not the violin here. The violin is over here. All right, it comes down like that. So once I start doing that, you know, getting all the lines in, it'll make more sense. But the charcoal is a good one. All right, I also like pen. I'll do a lot in my sketchbook. All right, with drawing lines like this. But honestly, I think that this style of drawing, one of the things that I may have had in the lecture there was that line, the key to really understanding how to see is line. All right, and really paying particular attention to it. But I'm drawing abstractly. I'm not drawing objects. Remember I said I don't want to call things objects. The objects are appearing as I'm continuing to draw lines, you see? So I just really followed a line through the space. But it gave me a composition that I could paint. I could paint this very easily, all right? Anything else?
And real quick, can you explain again what you meant by the speed of the line?
This is very important. That's a good question. People who can't draw, it's because they don't understand the length of a line. The only way you're going to understand the length of a line is by the speed by which you draw the line. So if you wind up drawing one line, like for instance, like this, you draw like this, and then the next line you're drawing like this. How do you know how long this line is? The only way that you can know that is by the feel of it. All right. And I think that I don't care how fast you draw, but the key is to draw the same. All right. So the speed by which you draw will help you to understand how long the line will be compared to another line. And you should work at that. And that'll improve your drawing dramatically. That and understanding that you're looking through your dominant eye. All right. Because a lot of people don't look through their dominant eyes. And I think they jump back and forth. And I've done that many times. So the more drawing I have, the more I get used to drawing out of my dominant eye. But if I haven't drawn for a while, hey, I come back, I feel rusty. All right. Anything else?
No, that's all. We have just under 30 minutes remaining.
Now we're going to go and make a painting. All right. So we got the drawing. We put the drawing in. All right. Our next thing is to make a painting in 30 minutes. All right. So the thing about it is I have a toned ground. It doesn't really matter what ground I have. All right. The thing is that whatever ground I have, well, it does matter in that the way I approach painting is all based on that. Now I'm looking to see, I'm getting more in the center here. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to see my, but I started realizing I'm looking out of that camera there. So you're able to see me paint. I should have maybe, when I was doing the drawing, maybe moved over a little bit more and helped me to see the proportions a little bit. But now we're going to start. Where do we start? Well, let me explain something to you. I think the key to make a painting is the first color you put down. All right. So I'm looking here and I'm thinking, what color would I work on? Would work on a gray surface. All right, with that kind of lighting. All right. Well, normally one of the keys to this is if it's warm light on the you know that you're seeing. In other words, you're seeing the warm objects right away. Then perhaps maybe drawing with a cool color might be a way to go. So I'm going to just start with a little bit of ultramarine blue. All right, and I'm going to you know one of the keys here is that we experience the same still life. All right, but now because I notice the speed by which my hand is moving. All right, and look where I started. All right, I've already experienced what I want. I've been looking at it when I did my drawing. All right, so I'm looking at putting things in a way that are because we only have a certain amount of time. We're going to be limited to that. So so we're going to just start to put the idea in. All right, and where that idea goes, a lot of it has to do with the kind of lines that you want. And here I'm using a line that's leading me in. So I know that, all right? And I also know that I'm kind of building an understanding. I can see what I'm going to paint before I start painting it, all right? And I see it on the canvas. So this is a very interesting line because I really think this is one of the very divisive lines that define space, as does this line here. All right. So I'm going to look for those, and then I'm going to, and again, because I've experienced this already, I can go ahead and start to make it work here. So you notice that I'm touching now more than I am drawing line, but I am using line as well. All right. And I'm looking for that pattern of light and dark, all right, which we talked about. Now, there are plenty of times I'll put something on a canvas and then I'll rub it out and start it again. And honestly, I think that's real important for you to understand. We're not going to do that tonight, but sometimes I'll feel my way along on the canvas and then realize, hey, I could have done a better composition a little bit differently. And I just might stop and do that. All right. So it isn't unusual for me to kind of rub things out. All right. But this is the way I'm going to set things up. But I'm a holistic painter. So just as I showed you with the drawing, I'm trying to deal with the holistic quality here of the arrangement of the objects. And we talked a little bit about the symbolism in the still life earlier. I think the things that I think are important are, you know, the arrangement of the colors more than anything else. I think those are the things that speak to me more symbolically than the forms. All right, but that's okay. I mean, it's for somebody else, it might be the forms as being the important thing they're going to focus on. But I am a colorist, so that's one of the things that I like to deal with. And I'm going to show you something here in a second as to setting up the drawing. We're just placing things right now. And first I just put dots down, but then eventually, because I can look at the shapes in between, I can look at the sizes, I can look at where things are, I can start to put in the darks. All right, so that's what I'm looking for. And then eventually I'll start to, let's see what we get here. One of the keys though, and I still got to come over here. So this is what I'm working with right now. All right, just trying to get this area in here. And then that, and we have to kind of figure out where the where this violin is going to be. Okay, and then there's a line back there. Now I tend to like to get into everything, so I'm going to look to see where I haven't looked. All right, and there's a lot of times when I'll start taking my lines and I'll start to line them up. All right, so that I'm sure that I have the right direction and we have the right size. And you notice that I haven't used much in the way of mineral spirits. It's mostly all fresh paint. All right, but thick and thin. And honestly, this is called scumbling now. I'm going to go through here in a second and scumble, but I've pretty well defined what I think are important areas of the painting. But I'm not sure that this is where things are. All right. So one of the keys to me making this work is to find, and this is what I'm going to tell you is real important. This is a point of intersection here where the book hits the pot. All right. And I'm going to use that point of intersection to help me find things. For instance, I can use it to kind of go from there to where the sculpture hits the pot. All right, and I can go from that point to where the top is here. All right, where the dark area of the pot is. And I'm going to just go and do this quickly. All right, so that I can see that I'm centering it right. All right, you can see how that is. So I'm not too far off there. All right, this I can figure out how far over this pot comes because I have that point where the sculpture starts right here. All right, so that pot kind of comes down here, but how far over does it come? Well, we do the same thing here. We come across here like this, and then we come from here to it. So it's about like that. That's as wide as that pot is. And then it's going to kind of come down. And how deep is it? If we run a line down like this, then we can kind of come from here to the base of it, okay, to its lowest point. All right, which is down here. All right. So this is the pot. So you can see that I can do it in proportion by just lining up some lines to make sure that I have it. Well, the same thing goes for all the other elements. For instance, the book over here. I'm going to double check to make sure that this is where the bend of the book is. Well, guess what? Bend of the book is right there. All right, because I went from that point to it, and I can also go from this point to it. So I use triangulating to try and make things happen, but also to try and figure out where the flowers are. For instance, I'll use this corner to figure out how wide this yellow flower is. And that yellow flower is about this wide here. And then I'll use that same point there to come over to where the width of the flower is. And that yellow flower is about this wide. So that yellow flower is like that. All right. And then and its height, we have to figure out its height, but that can come too. So I'm going to get at least a few of these things in so that I'm sure of the spacing. All right, and the placement. So any of the flowers or any of the like the violets that are there are off to the side here, like right here. So the violets come down at an angle like this, and then we have the violin. The violin we need to be able to find. We already have this point, so we can kind of go from that point, and we see that the violin comes out about here. And then from this point, we can find where the point of that violin is right here. So now we're doing something like this. Well, with a half an hour, I'm not going to spend too much time, all right? But I've got generally that. And then the other thing is just really getting the flowers. For instance, the one yellow flower lines up right here, okay? And then, and its width is like this. And it's interesting, but those flowers go at an angle there. And then, you know, they're somewhere in here. All right. Would I spend the time to make sure that this is all accurate? I would. All right. So next thing is I'm going to use a little bit of mineral spirits, and I'm just going to go through here and find my dark shapes. All right. So I myself like to do this because, and this is scumbling, by the way, so I'm not using a lot of paint now. All right. And I'm using a brush, and I'm using the side of the brush, and I'm just looking to see where the darkest areas are. So here's one here. Now you're going to say, well, why are you using the blue in the darks? Well, the blue and the darks are it's going to unify the dark shapes, first of all. That's one of the reasons why we're using the blue. The color, you know, one of the things that I said to somebody that's studying with me, I said, if you really want to learn color, one of the keys to learning color is to see color in the darks. All right. So when you're using blue, sometimes that might not help you to see that. All right. You could go after the color that's there, but you know, that's one of the things that you just have to make a decision about. But here's the beginning of that. And then we're going to go to this flower that's up here, and we're going to get that dark space that's back in here. So we want to just cover this canvas as quickly as we can, okay, so that we can see this this kind of thing And then I'm gonna, this is the area that I'm gonna have a little bit of a problem with. All right, so, and that's because it is complex with a lot of little things. All right, so we'll try to find those. Okay, and try to get that to work now. All right, and go after some of the shadows. And all painting, it just takes time to cover the canvas. All right, and I'm trying to do it as quickly as I can, so that I know exactly what I'm working with. And if anything, when I really feel a strong dark, I'm just taking a piece of paint and putting that dark in like that. All right, and then this here, I'm going to play a little bit more with that and some of the shadows underneath. And this is the area that I really liked. I like the way that went. All right, so now we kind of have the placement of things. I would go further with this, but because of the amount of time, I'm not going to. All right, but to say that the yellow flowers are going to be real important, and so we're going to go after those right now. And I'm going to look for a brush that I think I have. You see, I have a bunch of brushes in hand. I use a lot of different brushes. Okay, and depending upon the amount of time that I have. All right, so we're just going to go after the yellow flowers, all right, that we have and their placement. And you know, I'm not so worried about the their shape and that as much, or their color as much as their placement right now. All right, so you can kind of get an idea of how I'm just kind of placing them. Notice I didn't put any yellow. I knew I needed cadmium yellow, and of course I didn't put it out. I think I have it in my drawer, so we'll see. All right, but I placed that. I'm also going to place the oranges. All right, and you know, that becomes an important element of design. Now, one of the keys to this, I'm just going to see if I have some yellow, cadmium yellow here, and I did have it earlier. I guess it's cadmium yellow. Yes, it's cadmium yellow, but it sure isn't. Doesn't look like cadmium yellow under this side. It looks like a green yellow. It's this cadmium. So anyhow, so I'm going to make a cadmium yellow here, and that's with ochre and this other color. But I want to try and get the feeling of the placement and just the general nature of things. But there's an order by which I paint them, and the order is by which I see them. So one of the things, I just want to make sure my brush is clean here. All right, that's why I put out a lot of white, because I'm going to do this real quick. This is my palette, so it'll give you an idea of how I'm mixing. But you know, I want to keep my colors clean, and I want to wipe my brushes out. So you know, that plays an important part. But we're going to go after turquoise now. All right, it's over here. All right, and that turquoise is a really definitive color. So I'm going from the yellows to the turquoise. The reason that I'm doing that is because that's how my eye is picking up the information. And I tend to try and go after color based upon where my eye goes. So I'm going to try and get the value close to this. All right. And by the way, I want to read the light, and the light is a yellow light. So I might throw some yellow into that turquoise. All right. Just to get the sense of the yellow light. This is real important when you're working with light. But the other thing is, what I do is I'll go from where the light is the strongest and then work away. And this is what I do with scumbling. All right. And by the way, the other thing that I can do sometimes is just take my rag with a little bit of mineral spirits and deal with it like that too. All right. But now I'm just going to lightly squint. And when my eye starts picking up color, I'm just throwing it in. All right, this is what I mean by going after the color first. All right, and see what we got here. Try one of these. All right, so we're going to go after that turquoise that's here, back here, and the value is is more important than the color. So just keep that in mind, all right? So if this is a much lighter value here, all right, we want to try and make that. But sometimes it's what you put next to it, all right? And then of course we have that indigo that's back here. So now I'm going to go after this indigo that's back here. And every canvas, by the way, I have oil as well. And that oil I can use to really move the paint. And I'll use that oil to help to move things. But that color is right now is coming toward me. And I realize that it is. And so the more I look at it, the more I realize it's got more crimson in it. So I'm throwing the crimson in it to kind of set it back a little bit further. So I watch the colors to see what's going on. All right. And then the other thing is I go after the pattern of the light. So one of the strongest lights is right here. All right. So I'm going to go after that piece of light that's there. All right. And I lightly squint. And again, it's a yellow light. So just I'm using a lot of yellow ochre for the light. But you know, and this one is a little different. It's not as strong a light as the one back there. So, you know, I want to make sure that I get that kind of thing going. And then the other thing that I want is I want to make sure that I get the values next to one another and get the light to do what it looks like. And if this is one of the areas of the sharpest edge, I'm going to go after that sharp edge there. All right. Because I think the key to that is to get the sharpness as a point of focus. There are going to be these areas that your eye is going to, and you need to be able to find them. So you know, and you need to be able to judge the value and the color that's back here. And a lot of times it takes just covering the canvas. So this is one of the hard parts right now, is just getting that to start to move. But we're going to come back in here and work this dark area of the vase now, and we feel the green that's in it. So we're really going after, and you're going to see. You say to yourself, "Hey, he's not mixing a lot of color. He's really using color pure right out of the tube." I do a lot of that. This is one of the things that's real important to me in the way I paint. All right, and I'll use pure color relative to each other. So this is real important. Now something like that needs to fall back a little bit because it's coming toward us. So you see how I'll just set that back and this then pushes forward. So I just measure what is going on, you know, with things next to one another. And then also, I'm pretty good at laying paint on top of paint. And I don't know if you understand how that works, but a lot of people have lousy brushes. And your brushes, if they're stiff, you can't lay paint on top of paint very easily. So I think sometimes people just, they don't realize that. All right. And then the other thing that I'm going after here in the painting is just to try and get the value and color. And I say warm and cool. I mentioned that what's interesting about me is that I really like to go after color, but I'll sense the nature of the warm and coolness of the color, and that becomes an important part of this. And just to kind of give us some three-dimension, I might go after a little strong piece of light right in there at this point. And, you know, again, just start to fill things in, of course. All right, based upon how we're seeing. All right, so, and again, I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible for you. All right.
Well, we have about 5 minutes remaining. We certainly would welcome you to keep going if you're not too tired and want to, but you tell us.
If anybody wants to watch, I have no problem with this. All right, because I want to finish the paint. All right.
Great. Well, we'll keep going, and this will keep broadcasting on Facebook Live, and the recording will remain on Facebook. So if you do need to sign out and you want to finish watching later, that will be on Facebook permanently for you to revisit. Thank you.
Okay. and every color that I'm putting down is based on the order by which I'm seeing them at this point. And I'm watching the painting as it's coming together, which I think is real important. And every color that I use, and by the way, this is something I didn't talk about, but whenever I'm on a gray ground, I mix gray with every color that I want to fall back, right? Which I don't think people realize sometimes that the color of the ground means if it was a red ground, I would be mixing red into it. Okay. And we'll go back up into the flowers and get the flowers to start to work a little bit. And, you know, this is a quick sketch. So, you know, how much time do you take to really define things? I'm going to use my colors here to kind of help me to the negative space to define the light. So it'll give you an idea of how I'm using that. And so I don't want to, I don't want to stay in one area too long because there's a lot to understand about the space and that and the color relationships that you're working with. And if you stay too long in one area, you don't see the rest of the painting. So we're, you know, we're trying to deal with this in a way that helps me to understand the rest of the painting. But warms and cools, for instance, this shadow that's under here is a warm shadow. So I'm going to go after its warmth first, and then I'll go after its value too. All right, and I'll go after its strength of light that's here. But and we want to make sure that our see the width of that flower is right there. How am I measuring it? I'm measuring it off of this line, this connection right here. All right. So I tend to want to go back and check on those things. All right, to see how that's all working out. And I just correct the drawing as we go along here. I think that's real important to just understand that, but you're looking for edges. All right, one of the strongest edges you see is right here. So the nature of that is to really try to get that edge. All right, and to study edges all the way through the painting. So and you're seeing that I'm actually putting the paint on relatively thickly right now. All right, and I think that that helps. All right, to get the emphasis right. And I also have a palette knife that I can come back and I can scrape whenever I want as well. And Okay, let's try to get that flower, the one that's coming toward us. These are our focal points, so we want to try and make that work. And I lightly squint, try to get the pattern of light and shade. If you were to say, do you have certain colors on your palette that you can use to make this all work? Yeah, I do. I know that I'm working with yellows, so I really wanted to put out as many yellows as I could. All right, I knew I was going to be working with violets, so I actually do have some violet color here that I can throw in. Okay, and they see me mixing color. And when I'm mixing color, I'm measuring colors off of one another. So like, for instance, this turquoise that we started with, all right, I really want to start to really emphasize more now, because this is one of the strongest pieces of color in this setup. So I'll do something like that. But the other thing that I'll do is something like this. This is very important in the way I paint, and that is to take a palette knife. And this is not a good one. Let me get one that's got a little bit better, maybe a little bit smoother surface to it. All right. And what I'll do is I'll throw that paint on there thicker. All right, so that I can work it and just get that thick paint on the canvas, especially in the foreground. Foreground plays an important part. And then also I'll do things like this, which I think is real important in making a design work. All right, is to just kind of lightly scrape a little bit, kind of push and pull things down, and just to get the order of things as far as the background is concerned. We have a light back here, so a bit cooler light, a little bit duller. All right, and then we have the bowl, which is this beautiful white bowl that's got a lot of cool light in it. So we'll throw that in here, and just get that bowl over there, and then the grays that are in the background. And remember, I said, okay, we got the gray. We're on a gray canvas to really push things back based upon their grayness. So we're doing that, and then I'm going to come back in the foreground again and start to work the shapes of these shadows underneath this object. Try to get the design, get the edges. Keep moving. All right. You see me just pushing colors down now. All right. And round objects can be a challenge. All right. Always. Okay. And then let's try this. A nice shape in here. So I go after the shapes. What kind of brush am I using? I'm using a filbert that's very round. Okay, and now we're going to kind of go after some of these lights that are here. And I really look to see the color of them. So one's coming toward me, one's receding. All right. and how cool maybe one is. Like for instance, this was a cooler light here. And then maybe and how many times do I put these in? I may put them in 3 or 4 times before they're right, okay? But right now they're just being placed, and then okay, and then you see that, and you see how it's lost its shape. So we're going to go back and bring that shape back in here. We don't want to take that value out so much at this point. And also want to really get the feeling of this in here, this moment that's running along this look. The complement of viridian is alizarin. So a lot of the shadow in this dark pot is also very, has a lot of alizarin in it too. So you see me mixing alizarin in it to get that color combination. I'm thinking warm and cool as I'm working. I'm thinking light and dark as I'm working. All right, I'm watching the shape of this as I work on it. I want to make sure that I get that shape right, but again, because I'm giving this demo, I get myself standing off to the side sometimes, all right? So I shouldn't, I should just stay in one place, but I almost feel like I'm in your way, but because I forget that I have 2 cameras.
A question has come in. What is the complement to cadmium red?
The cadmium red is a, depending if it's a light or whatever, is a blue-green, all right? So because it's an orange red, all right? So when you're using the complement, you know, you're going to go after the, you know, the warm and cool nature of it, which is to understand the blue-green nature of the color. Now we're going to try and get this to work here a little bit more. I paint shape. So when you're seeing me going after this, I'm really looking at the shapes that are taking place here. All right. And then going after the value and the color. So, you know, it takes time to get this to be the way you know, the way you want it, but take your time. And, you know, I do a lot of, I did very little in the way of preliminary drawing here today, all right, to show you that there are times when I don't draw that much, but I draw as I'm making the painting. So the cadmium red has orange in it. So if we do that, this is one of the things that we want to understand about it. I do a lot of squinting, so I'm going to and I might even go after some color. I like to really throw color on. So you see me using a palette knife now, and just kind of going after the colors a little bit stronger. Okay. Go after a little bit of color in the background, really get the darks up above. Find them as gray.
Well, we still have a very strong audience of about 62 people watching between Zoom and Facebook. I want to make sure that we have some time to tell people about the online classes at Yellow Barn.
Okay.
So I understand you've been converting all of your classes to online for the spring?
Yeah, we're going online, and you saw how I'm set up today and how I have a camera that I can actually, we're encouraging our students to set their studios up, and they can work in their studio, but I give homework assignments. We give lectures like the one that you just got today. All right. And, you know, we're hoping that, you know, people need to keep their hands in it. And there's a lot of nice interaction. People really feel like there's something about the online that I think people have all gotten to know each other a lot better from being online. That I think is an interesting, positive thing about working online. So yeah, I think we have actually 60 classes at the Yellow Barn right now that we're planning on starting here the second week in April. So if you're thinking about, you want to take a painting class, what I'm going to be doing with that painting class is pretty much what I'm showing you here. We'll work at certain, set up certain things. I know that I've got a landscape group, and they're actually dealing with their assignment this week is to paint a symbolic landscape. So That's not that we do that all the time. I mean, that's just one of the things that we're working on. Here, I'm really elevating the color the value right now. All right. And you kind of get an idea that I put a color down, but I'm really starting to squint. And I'm building, by the way, this painting is going to be built on this relationship right here. Okay. It is the feeling of the tension of this light pushing up against this edge, because that's where the strongest moment of light is right now. It's starting to take place right in there. And I'm going to look at this for warm and cool. So it's interesting. This light is a cooler light going back here. This is a warmer light, and the warmer light doesn't stand out as much. All right. And that's, it says a lot about the warm color that's surrounding it. But you can kind of get an idea how I might start to really work this moment now. All right. And as I'm working it, I'm just working away from that point. I want to, I'm using a different brush now. I've gone to the square brush, a flat brush, right? And really what I'm doing now is just kind of going after the darks again. All right. And this time really starting to set the darks up a little bit stronger. And we'll see how this works in a second. But going back to the Yellow Barn classes, yeah, if you're interested, you just have to go to the yellowbarnstudio.com and sign up for a class. And if you want to study with me, I'm teaching a landscape figure and still life on Mondays and Wednesdays at 4 to 6:30, and then I have a landscape class that I'm teaching in the mornings on Tuesdays and on Mondays and Wednesdays, and depending upon the group, I have one out here in Frederick that's studying with me, and they're going to be taking that class. That's open, by the way. All right, just in case you're interested, as well as the other one now. Now, I just overemphasized the value here. All right, and this is one of the things that I'm winding up doing is starting to try and find the right value and the right color. But you can get an idea that things are starting to come together here now, as far as the colors are concerned. All right, and this is what I'm after right now, is just to really go after the color combinations, trying to get the right colors that are working. I spent some time with this vase, only because it's complex. All right, and any other questions, Melissa?
There was a question about what colors are on your palette.
Well, that's a good question. That's good. The colors on my palette, one of the things that you see, I'm using a lot of what I call warms and cools, but they're really vibrant. All right, and I usually go after the vibrancy of the color first, and then I'll reduce it like this. I'll reduce it. I'll push it back. All right, and then I start looking at the focus. The colors that I'm using, I have on my palette. I have a couple.
We'll spotlight your palette so everyone can see it close up. There. Well, it's quite a work of art. Oh, I have it with the small camera. It's okay.
Yeah, the thing that I'm using here is, you notice I separate my warms and cools. Cool colors are on this side, warm colors are here. Right? And what I'm doing is when I mix, you see how I use the white. I use a lot of white, by the way. And the thing about it is I'll try to keep things clean. All right, so my color isn't a muddy color, and a lot of that has to do with you saw me do this. All right, I have a really good brush, but you saw me lay that paint on thick. All right, and that preserves the, you know, the intensity of the color. So I try to teach students how to mix like that. All right. But you know, it does take a lot of experience and good brushes. And I think far too often people's brushes are too hard, and they don't do exactly, you know, they don't give you what you want. All right, because they can't, they're not flexible enough to put the paint down. So, okay. And I'm feeling pink, by the way, and I got some pink here. I'm feeling pink over here. All right, and it's still green, but I've mixed pink into it. All right, so you're gonna say, well, how do you do that? I feel the warm and cools. All right, and you know, I just keep working it, and I'll look for certain color combinations. And I also have colors on my palette, so that helps me to be able to get those in. But now, one of the keys to this painting is this focal point right here. And that's the area that I want you to really understand plays a significant part in the painting. There's a couple highlights back here on a vase right now, all right? And there's a kind of pinkish light back in here, kind of coming down onto, that's too strong. So we'll make it a little softer. Here like this. And then that kind of comes out, there's a shape that's coming out here. See, I just go after shape is what I do. And I think it feels blue, but then every time I put blue into it, well, it doesn't fall back. So it almost needs to have the paint mixed into it like that. All right. And that kind of comes down like this now. So we're starting to fill this in. This side we haven't really worked on. This is a really beautiful moment right here where there's light on this figure. It's kind of got this figurine and its face right about there. And it's falling back, so I'm going to gray it a little bit. Okay. But then it kind of comes over here like this, and it makes this other figure that's standing right here. Now I have a head that's sitting over there, and I can spend time with it. It's sort of a pinkish color too. All right, and kind of comes down and makes a shoulder, and then this comes down here like this, and then we have the other flower back here, and it goes up against that sculpture. And then and it's more of a yellow orange, so we're going to throw some yellow orange in. You can watch me mixing. All right, and I'm going to go after the light on it here, which shoots up. Okay, and you know, I just go after, my eye will pick up something, like it'll pick up a little highlight, and I'll just throw that little highlight in. Or now it's coming back to the highlight here, and I'll throw that highlight in. So you can kind of get an idea how your eye is moving, all right? And the mixing of color. And I don't know what to tell you as far as how I mix color, except to say that I feel warm and cool, and I really judge the value and the intensity of the colors. And I try to see exactly what they are. At first, they may appear, and then the other thing, and this is real important, I'll look at my palette and I'll see what colors I'm not using. And that is really important. Okay, so
Well, we're coming up on 8:30.
Okay.
You just let us know how long you'd like to keep going.
I'm gonna be here all night. I don't give up on a painting until I get it. All right. So you're experiencing what the real Walt Bartman is about. All right. He doesn't sleep. All right. He's constantly working. All right. And that's because I love it. I love trying to make that object appear. And you know, I'm gonna look at it. I really haven't looked at it in the mirror, but I mean in the image on the and it looks, this looks a little short here, all right, and this looks a little long here, right? So you know, I can adjust that. Sometimes you look at those things and see what they look like as you're working. But this is the kind of thing where you can kind of line up things, all right. You can find the center of this thing here, and you can go from the center to the widest point, and the widest point is here. So this is the widest point of this object right here. Okay, and then the same way here, you can go over here from the center of it, go over like that, and then you know, use the point from up above and come down and see where it is. And this one isn't too bad. This one is about right here. So so I can adjust that, just the shape a little bit. And let's get this warm shadow back here. And I do a lot of mixing on the canvas too, all right, so that you know that you know, there's mixing of color on my palette, but then there's also the mixing of color on the
Can you clarify what you meant by it's important to see what colors you're not using on your palette?
Yeah, that's a good one, because those are the ones I'm not thinking about. All right, and and I recognize that, and then I wind up trying to use them, try to see them. All right, so if I'm not using, like for instance, burnt sienna, all right, then I'll tell myself, go look for more burnt sienna. All right, so
So you will include every color on your palette in the piece.
I will. As a matter of fact, this object here will be warm and cools. It'll be you know, it will have the try and get the color combinations, all right, that you're experiencing. But a lot of what I say to myself is warm and cool, and then I kind of go after shape. So you know, I have, and by the way, I have a section of my palette over here, which I can really save to mix cleaner color. All right, and let's see what we get here. Got a light that's going to be underneath there right now. And you really got to do a lot with value too. So sometimes you're really trying to make the color, but you really have to elevate the value. The key is to get that to work for you as well, and then get the shape. And you're going to look at that shape and try to make that shape that's there, and then and again, it's just kind of going after the color combinations that you're seeing, all right, and then refining everything as the painting is being worked on. And if you see a shape, if you really see a shape that's really strong, like I'm seeing this light shape back here, then I really want to go after trying to make it be seen. Okay, so if there's a shape over here that it's coming out of the side of that, then I make that. And adjusting the values again as I'm working. I just want to make sure that I've got the right shape. This is the object that's going to be the hard one to make work because of its shape is a difficult shape to draw. And so you really have to kind of play with it until you get it just the right amount and the right way you're seeing it and how strong you're seeing certain things. I'm going to look in the camera just to see what the camera's seeing, because that'll help me to kind of see the shape that I'm making. It's getting better, so that's good. All right, so we'll leave that for a while. Go up in here and get these sculptures that are up here. You have that. This is where I kind of draw and paint at the same time. I'll look at shapes, go after those. See if I'm looking inside this flower right there. All right, and then see the combination of color in here. And then kind of go after its value. And remember that this is further back, so the darker it is, the more it's going to come toward you. So just pushing it back like that helps. I'm not so sure about this shape still. I'm gonna really play with it. And sometimes you can paint the shapes around something and that will help you to draw it. So, you know, we tend to wind up drawing things by looking at the negative, not the positive. Back and really accentuate this light in here. Get that feeling that that's really a strong light under here. So I'm going to throw in a lot more. Now you're going to say, well, there are areas in the painting you haven't worked. Why are you spending so much time in this area? Sometimes you just have to get the painting to start to do what you want it to do. And so, you know, I'll tell myself to move away from that. But, you know, there are times when you really want to just try and make it, you know, fill in the shapes and things like that, especially in the foreground. You really want to work your foreground over your background. So now we're going to go after the violin. And
Well, we could give this maybe another 10 more minutes, and then if you continue painting on your own, perhaps you could share some images with us that we can post on Facebook.
this would be good. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything else that you can think of?
There was a question if you could run down the colors on your palette for us.
All right. The colors on my palette are, I use a black, and I use that to really gray colors down. All right. And then I have Prussian blue. And Prussian blue is sort of like the darkest blue that I can use. And you'll see me use it. Look, you'll see me use it pure. All right, which is very interesting as a dark. Okay. And the other color that I have next to it is I have phthalo blue. And you're gonna say, well, why do you have all these blues? Well, that's because there's a certain point where you want to really use a color that maybe is cooler, warmer, greener. All right. And a phthalo will be the color that will do that. And then I have the ultramarine blue, which is a violet blue. After that, then I have the what's called Verterer blue or King's blue by Old Holland. Okay. And then I have a manganese blue. They're close, but they're not exactly the same. But one of the things that you're seeing with me is you're seeing me use a lot of kind of pure color. All right. So I'm going to use that. And then I have phthalo green. And phthalo green is the color particularly for this pot that's here. All right, because it's that rich turquoise, and then when you use white with it, it becomes turquoise. And then after that, I have a little bit of what we call cadmium green light, and it actually works as a yellow too, or it can work for the greens that are in the painting. And then after that, I have, and I haven't used, is a sap green, which I haven't used. Will I use it? Now that I said I haven't used it, now I might use it. All right, so that's how that works. All right, and then after that, I have the crimson. All right, alizarin crimson, and then I have cadmium red light, and then I have orange. Then I have which is supposed to be cadmium yellow. All right, but under this light looks like a greenish yellow, and it'd be interesting to see, painting under warm light. And then I have a Naples, and then next to that I have a burnt sienna, and a yellow ochre, and a burnt umber. And I haven't used the burnt umber. And I'll tell you one thing: there are a lot of paintings that I start with burnt umber, and that's a really great color. And the fact that I haven't used it tonight is something that tells me that I need to see more of it. And you know what I'm using right now? I'm using it to make the pot darker. I don't know if you can see that, but that's burnt umber mixed into the color at this point. All right. And then from that, I have some crazy colors. I have a pink, and I have some colors that I don't usually use, which are like, it's sort of like called violet something. All right. So I have those. Now you can see how I'm mixing. You can see where my painting is at this point, how I'm starting to get, it's starting to fill in. And one of the things that's going to happen is I start to see the rhythm in the painting. And the rhythm is a repeating rhythm. And it may be a vertical rhythm in certain forms, all right? Or it may be this curvilinear movement, all right, as it moves up and through. For instance, this flower right here, I just took some real cadmium red, but actually I want to get that to be darker, but this will be the color that perhaps pulls that color out, that flower out, okay? And if the value is still a little bit too much, or it's a little bit too intense, then I'll mix the complement into it. So now we're kind of getting into this part of the painting, and little by little we'll be mixing other colors together. All right, this is what I knew I was going to get into this kind of part of this painting where I would need that pink. So now you can kind of get an idea of where it is at this point. It's coming, isn't it? It looks like it's going to be, you know, I'm at the point where, you know, I feel like it's working for me. And then after I do this, then I'll start to really refine edges. I'll start looking for edges. This is the area I really haven't spent a lot of time with right here yet. All right, and I may just throw some colors in and then start to work that a little bit more. But know that I'm looking underneath it. All right, and that's another part of looking at the still life. So, you know, I'll have something like that where you're looking underneath the object. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to say, I know we've gone a long time. How many people do we have still watching us?
Oh gosh, we still have 45.
Oh my God, these are my kind of people. All right.
Yeah. Well, it was so generous of you to stay with us for an extra 45 minutes. Thank you, Walt.
I lose track of time, you know that, Alyssa, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. I really enjoyed it. I think, you know, it turned out to be a you know, a good session. I hope people see how I constructed it.
Yeah, and Walt, on behalf of MAA and on behalf of all of our guests who have joined us tonight, I'd like to thank you. You've really given us some nice distraction and learning opportunities during a really difficult time. And this was one of the best evenings that I've had during this pandemic. So thank you so much for your generosity.
Let me say goodbye to all of you with
let's see your face.
Yeah, it's probably covered with paint. All right.
There you are.
Okay. So there I am. All right.
Yeah.
And you know, you get to see where the painting is and look at the still life. I think this is great because you can kind of see how they're almost repeating each other. All right. And I'll work a painting. So, you know, it's just the beginning of the idea, of course. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you. Please share some images with us and we'll post those on MAA's Facebook. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Walt. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.